All right, we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Wine Shark Wednesday. It is I, your Wine Shark. Hopefully, you guys are having a wonderful week. Getting started with our week here, really, kind of the Wednesday kicks off the busy time of the week while we've done computer work for the rest of it. So doing research and whatnot, but I hope everybody's doing well. We are having a fun theme today. We're going to be talking about Texas Revisited and some of our things coming back, coming up, and doing whatnot. So just kind of the look back. Thank you everybody for joining us for Wine and Cheese Part 9. We had a very good crowd and some very fun wines. Some lighter reds with some nice, nice variant cheeses. Everything from pungent Italians to sweet English to savory in between. So it was quite a lot of fun. Yeah, that was cool. Upcoming, we've got some fun things. We're going to talk a lot about Texas today, not just from the topic, but also from the wine and from some upcoming events. Just as preview, we're going down to Fredericksburg this week, or next week rather, and we're going to go poke around the Texas Wine Trail between Fredericksburg and the Johnson City and Stonewall and that whole area. So it's going to be awesome. Then we've got April coming, right around the corner, starting tomorrow, which is lots of fun stuff. We're going to be doing white dessert wines on the 15th. Then we've got, that's Thursday, by the way. We're going to be doing the shows for the online tastings are coming on Thursdays this month. So the 15th, we've got white dessert wines. On the 16th, we've got a live show for the Old World Wine Show down at Reunion Tower. We're nearly sold out. And then finally, we've got on the 26th, we will be doing, 15 plus 7 is 22, plus 7 more is 29. So the 29th, we will be doing the Will It Blend Show, Part 3. We're going to be doing Bordeaux. So that'll be fun stuff for those of you looking for upcoming shows. It'll be a lot of fun. But anyway, so let's talk about today's topic. Let's go ahead and kick it off. We're going to be talk about just it's Texas Revisited. So to set some context, moved to Texas when I was in high school, and my wine career began here when I was in college and waiting tables, and then it became a personal hobby post-college. I had even looked post-college, or even in the middle of that kind of college, during my college time, had entertained the idea of working at some Texas wineries that were in the area around Guadalupe County, and had experimented with Texas wine during my table waiting career. Went up to a place called Three Sisters near Bernie, and anyway, had sprinklings of experience with various Texas wineries in my early career. Then, as this grew into kind of a full-blown passion and WineShark began, started going with family and friends when I moved to Dallas, started going with family and friends to an event called Grape Fest. There's a little town called Grapevine, and I say little town, it's a medium-sized town squished in between the whole larger Dallas metroplex. But they have an annual event that brings, I think, something like 100 or so Texas wineries together. And they have a great big tent that you can basically go taste just a whole panoply of different wines from all kinds of different producers. So for about 3 years running, we would go and visit and try wines. And so it was a pretty decent exposure to what Texas had to offer. And it was kind of formational in, by this point in time, I was much more experienced in my career. Hadn't become a sommelier yet, but still certainly had, some pretty grounded education. And with that, I started looking at, forming my own opinions about Texas wineries. So you want to hear the math repeated after half a bottle of wine? Okay, no way, man. Right? I see your math challenges. I'm going to start right now about how we do calendar math. Blah blah blah. Anyway, hello to everyone, Donna, and to Mark and Betty, to Barbara, and of course to the Hamlins who are chastising me about my math problems. Anyway, so going and tasting a lot of wine over several years, I formed a pretty strong opinion about Texas wine. An unfortunate reality was I didn't really like a lot of what I was exposed to. Now, I kind of angle that within the idea of I didn't find a lot of wine styles that I liked that Texas did well. Not that I had all bad wines, but what I couldn't find out there were wines that approached anything like the styles of bolder reds or well-rounded reds, or even minerally full-bodied whites. A lot of what I saw in this is back in, so this, by the way, is now what? Talking about 18 years ago, right? This is a long time in the history in the deep past, right? So in the before times. And so this is between, say, 2000, I would say, yeah, not 18 years ago. So let's say probably from about 16 to 14 years ago, within that time frame. Let's say something around '04 to '06, and going several times to these events. But anyway, long story short, I couldn't find a lot of the wines that I wanted. Trying to find a good Cabernet Sauvignon, trying to find anything in the red family that wasn't a Merlot. Not that I'm anti-Merlot, just the fact that I was looking for something that was a little outside that. Anything in the Cabernet Franc, Zinfandel kind of range. Couldn't find anything that had a worthy profile, that had structure, that had body, that had a very serious take on it. And on the flip side, there was a ton of wine out there that was, for lack of a better term, and for my own personal opinion, pandering. Very much aimed at sweeter styles for non-wine drinkers, for people that don't have an appreciation for for dry wine, for any sort of in any fascination, in any portion of that. So it was really kind of jarring that I couldn't find anything in their portfolios, and even from the white side of the world. They had some attempts at Chardonnays that really weren't there, and nothing else in the at the time was really getting through. Their Viognier hadn't really come around in a lot yet, and it also they didn't see anything in the Marsanne Roussanne, any Northern Rhone clones or anything like that. So it really kind of was. It felt like Texas was trying too hard to be something else. It felt like Texas was trying to be California, while California was trying to be France, and Texas was late to the party and decided, screw it, we're going to make soda pop. And while I appreciate the humor of your bubblegum candy pink, Texas pank wine, and your sweet Texas reds, and your all these sort of things, it wasn't a serious attempt in the wine world to me. It was a product that was built to sell to a particular market, and in no way, shape, or form was going to perform well on the world stage, or to anybody who had a real kind of serious love of wine of any in broad styles, without truly turning the hourglass all the way upside down. So that being said, and after last week's show where we talked about keeping an open mind and revisiting things, Texas is not producing the same wines today that they were 20 years ago, 10 years ago, same sort of thing. I've had a few new wine experiences with some opportunities since then, but I did not go out of my way to be trying to find Texas's best and brightest. For the 400 or some wineries that are here, there are very few that I could count, and I'm talking about for a long time on one hand, that I would actually actively recommend to people. And that's a pretty strong statement. I mean, I consider myself having very broad tastes when it comes to wine. I mean, I can appreciate a Moscato d'Asti with 5.5% alcohol, rose petals, and bubblegum sweetness on this side, all the way to an Amontillado sherry that tastes like ash and stripped walnuts, and everywhere in between. Each has its place in the symphony that is wine, and having the lack of finding something that's worthwhile in Texas was disconcerting. But it was also a factor of, I think, what the wine industry was doing at the time. So let's rewind all the way back to Texas wine history. Let's talk a little bit about that and some of the studies that I've done since, and kind of my theories. And again, these are personal opinions, not based on anybody's, really, hey, let's go out and do this, or their particular history of wine. But this is, just kind of the sketch of the facts. So Texas is a very old wine producing area of America. It is I mean, in fact, even before the Franciscans were planting grapes in California, that later became the California wine trade. In the early 1600s, late mid 1600s, we have the same monks, priests, monks slash church producing wine here in Texas. Sacramental reasons alone, right? That's most of where our wine history comes from. Now, I always hesitate that that's a great place to say yes, we started planting grapes and yes, we started making alcoholic wine out of it. However, that is not fine wine production, nor should it be considered anything like it. But it is without a pun, the root of the problem. It is the root of the end of the industry. So while Texas had been producing wine for a while, it never really took off in the same way that California did. They never got the big boom that, by the way, for California, basically was preceded by the gold rush, bringing in population, and then exploding with a lot of money came a lot of desire to turn that into a major industry, as in other places in the world, i.e., the older world of Italy, Germany, Spain, and France. Texas never really took off like that. And then we got to get to the Prohibition period. While Prohibition devastated California's wine world, it absolutely eradicated it in Texas. Texas didn't maintain any of the rootstock slash, or even agricultural production that we saw out in California. And the heritage of winemaking never really took root here either. Again, skip the puns. I apologize, but it does make contextual sense. So that being said, if you go along for the rest of the ride, Texas doesn't come back onto the wine scene until till the 1970s. Now, if you look over in California, it starts happening a little bit earlier, but that's what we talk about, the kind of the renaissance of California's rebirth to it as well. But the overall acreages and the tone, seriousness, and overall production of Texas never really got back there. Texas is fifth in our country in terms of states as far as wine production is concerned. Okay, so that means that you've got California, Oregon, Washington, I want to say, and who would be bigger than that? Maybe New York, are larger than Texas in terms of actual wine production. But despite the fact that Texas has got as much that amount of grapes or that amount of acreage under planting, Texas is dwarfed by even the smallest French AOCs. Okay, so the amount of grapes produced in these, has exceeded that in even small acreage, other places is still bigger than what Texas does. So we haven't had a chance to really grow and expand. Even if we might be fifth in our nation in terms of world production, it's very small. With that comes a lot of experience, etc. And the thing that, looking back at that and comparing it to what I've learned over the past, say 5 or 10 years, it reminds me and puts Texas in a position very similar to what I've seen in the wine industries of South Africa, in Australia, and these places that have been what are basically later to the party New World winemakers. Okay, so while California is earning worldwide prestige awards in the late 1970s, the rest of these places are just getting their wine industries started again. And they didn't have the history to lean back on and the heritage slash talent slash all these other things. So in imitation came the big problem, right? The imitation game of, well, if Cabernet Sauvignon is the most prestigious and most popular red wine grape in the world, we clearly have to plant a Cabernet Sauvignon. California did it. Why can't we, right? Well, that is where I think we fell down. Right? That's where I think the Texas winemakers don't have the opportunities in the same way that you saw for other wineries. Variable climate is one of the biggest challenges when it comes to the world of viticulture. Consistency is the key to a lot of the most prestigious wine areas in the world. So location, etc., matters. While the soils of the Panhandle, which is probably the most prolific version of our Texas wine regions, as far as growth is concerned, resemble that of certain parts of Australia, though overall weather patterns, sunlight availability, etc., aren't the same, right? And so we get a lot of variability, and we have to have great varietals, cultivation methods, and traditions that adapt to those things, viticulturally speaking, that can accommodate for that. So that all being said, I think we've finally stopped trying to do the other thing. In the last 10 years, what I've seen is that Texas is starting to embrace varietals of different styles, and certain wineries are definitely taking an approach to their winemaking that I would say puts them in that serious class of winemakers. They're not just trying to make and sell wine to people who will buy anything with the label Texas on it. Because that, frankly, has been one of the big problems, is that, yeah, I mean, if you're from here or you've lived here for any length of time, you know damn well that there's an entire core of the population that if you put a Texas shaped sticker on it, they'll buy it. Doesn't matter what its quality is. It's got Texas on it. It must be good, which is complete bullshit. It's one of those things you be honest about your criticism about yourself and be better. So just because it's from here doesn't make it better. Pride does not actually come first. Quality has to come with it. So I've actually had the chance to try some new wines over the last 5 years or so that have started to change my opinion. And one of the things I'm going to do an active effort for is working towards changing that, or giving the opportunity to a lot of the wineries that I haven't had a chance to before. So not only are we starting that out with our grocery store grab today, but we're going to take a trip next week. We're going to go down and spend some time with some of these wineries that I've been doing some research on and looking at what their lineups are, that I think that have some actual chops, that are making some wine that is worth it. Now, again, I'm going to plead a little bit of ignorance here, so I'm sure that there's somebody that knows out there. There's all kinds of folks that are out there that got this kind of awards and this many gold medals in these competitions amongst the state or this or that, but in the community, in the wine production community, in the sommelier community, in the professional beverage and spirits industries, Texas still has a very particular place and isn't the go-to for when it comes to, oh, if you really want a great insert wine name here, this is the region to go for, right? We don't have a style yet that really is identified as our thing. And I think that's coming around. I think this is changing, and I'm eager to meet some people who are involved in the production process, who have obviously strong opinions about their product, their process, and certainly what it is that they're doing out there. But this is the proof is in the pudding. I'm not a reviewer by profession or trade, but I certainly have the ability to look at things critically and say, hey, you got a good product here. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? So. One of the other things that will hopefully follow, because obviously many of my customers are local here in Texas, and therefore we've wanted to explore the Texas wine scene as part of a journey together. So we'll be looking for a opportunity to go back, host some shows at some various places, basically do a ticketed style event, live and on site. People can travel, come visit. Effectively, a different style of tour where I will be present and do some value added shows at certain featured Texas vineyards / wineries. So should be kind of cool, and I'm hoping to do that within this year once our health situation gets to a truly prudent level of free travel. I think that'll be something that we would all enjoy. So look for information on that. My Patreon members, you guys will receive advance notice warning and ticket purchasing options for the limited shows that will be available. So one more benefit to being part of our WineShark Patreon. Anyway, all right, I'm going to catch up with everybody's chit chat here. Mostly we talk about places to go eat and go eat and visit in Grapevine and some other things. So anyway, all right, let's see here. Let's talk about grocery store grab. It is about that time. So in honor of our Texas Wine Weekend, I did a random grocery store grab for a name that I know fairly well accessible, and a winery that I've actually heard good things about, but haven't tried in many years. Although I will absolutely admit that while I see Becker Winery on the shelves quite frequently, I have seen some of their reserve products that have a, let's say, distinctly higher price point than I would expect. A lot of their reserve products run in the $40 to $50 per bottle range, and that puts them in a pretty heady category, if you ask me. We've talked about pricing before. To do a brief tangent on that, When you start getting past the 40 to $50 range, you're in an area where high quality producers of mass market wines are going to be shooting their best bullets. You are definitely in a category where typicity, meaning the individual varietal type, location, being able to identify where wine is from based on its soil properties, things like that, and very high quality winemaking using some of the best grapes in the world, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to start seeing that happen at that price point. So you're playing in the deep end of the pool. And I am eager to attempt to go and try some of these and find out whether they're worth it. Because my formed opinion after many years of drinking Texas wine is, you got to be shitting me. For that same $50, I can get a guaranteed better product that I know and trust. And so it's on Becker to show me, no, this is worth that. However, they do have some much more economical versions of the wines. So of their wines, this is their regular wines, they're non-reserve wines. Which, if we're going to try today, we're going to try the Becker Vineyards Tempranillo, Texas Tempranillo from 2019 is the current on deck wine for the grocery store grab. Let's see, looks like this on our label. So it has a longhorn on it. Ta-da! Very Texasy. In fact, most of their wine, I actually really like a lot of their labeling. It is both artistic and iconic of Texas. It bespeaks their history and tradition. And while the Texas Longhorn is probably a little overdone as far as things that are Texas, most of their stuff has a much more subtle thing to it to celebrate the less obvious. I chose this wine for two reasons. One, it was easily available at my local grocery store. Two, it was within the usual price point we play for in the grocery store grab. So this started off at $18.99 before list price, and then came down to $12. Actually, no, so $17.99, so $18 for list, and then $12, $11.99 at the counter. With your store discount. So very much playing in the grocery store realm we're used to. Tempranillo is also one of the grapes that I've heard is a good thing in the world of Texas. They didn't have, I don't recall that they had one at my last visit to a winery called Keepersall, but this is one of those grapes that should be in Texas's wheelhouse, that tolerates heat well, that has good compatibility with our weather, yada, 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 yada. This should be the thing that makes Texas shine. So I eagerly looked at it. Now notice that this is a Texas High Plains AVA. The Tempranillo that is grown there, so that means that they're growing up in the Panhandle, not where Becker Vineyards is actually located, which is Stonewall, Texas, which is basically dead between Fredericksburg and Johnson City, about halfway there. Okay, so that's the wine we're trying today. We're going to give it the usual grocery store grab treatment, which, to be fair, is if those of you that are not aware, it's our basic attempt to be a label first and label focused wine drinkers, so that these are, if you don't have the opportunity to shop at a specialty wine store, we want to get the best value per dollar for non-big box and non-specialty stores. So the grocery store is where many of us do our wine shopping, mostly out of convenience, but some people out of necessity. And we want to know what's in the bottle. Am I getting my dollar's worth? Because the grocery store can be a daunting place. Oftentimes they don't have an experienced professional to help you choose wine. So you're kind of on your own, and the grocery store grab is meant to help you learn how to read good labels, make sure that you were rewarding wineries that do good labeling, and that's it. That's basically the bottom line. So we want to know a few things from the label. We want to know what's in the bottle. Well, good stuff. It's showing us that it's Tempranillo. It's even telling us where it's from, Texas High Plains. Now, the version I have is a newer version of the label. It does not say Texas High Plains on the front of the label. It just says Texas Tempranillo. I believe these are the same wines. I grabbed the image from their own website, so hopefully that's just a difference in printing year over year. We've also got, so where they're grown, what the variety is, we've got all that said, we've got their name on the label. So this is good, right? Very plain, very Texasy. I dig what they're doing. They're not getting crazy wild, but they're keeping it in. They also have pretty big text on the front. The ABV is at 13.9. But the back of the label, where wineries should be doing the work. This is where the wine buyer, should be looking to find out information on the product inside. And I don't just mean history about Becker Vineyards and their whole prestige line. You're going to get the marketing text. We understand that. But what we really want to see is things like flavor words and food pairings. Specifically flavor words, we want descriptive, easy to understand, non-wine drinker language that we can easily understand what's in the bottle. Telling me about what type of oak you use, for instance, is interesting to a wine person because they understand what that might impact in flavor. Other than that, unless you spend a lot of time in the industry, I don't know why or how you would care. On the flip side, flavor words that describe food flavors that most of us understand are very beneficial because they help us understand what we're going to feel in our mouth. So, on the back label here, we'll go ahead and read this. Aged in both French and American oak barrels. Well, there's that thing. So, if you're not a wine person, I'm not sure if you know what that means, other than this is where the oak came from. Our Tempranillo has intriguing flavors of mocha and sun-dried cherries. These I like. See, now there's good words. Mocha is a very distinctive thing. It's not saying just, we're not just talking about coffee. We're not just talking about chocolate. We're talking about something in between. We're talking about a soft flavor. And then sun-dried cherries. That's a very specific type of, we're not talking about cherry jam. We're not talking about fresh picked cherries. We're talking about sun-dried cherries, a more reductive, less juicy style of flavor and concentrated. This is good. The rest of the back is basically, please plan on visiting our winery in your next trip to the beautiful Texas Hill Country. I am. We hope you will enjoy our handcrafted wines with good food and in moderation, to life, to love, and to friendship. So, charming bit of marketing speak, and I love the fact they put the marketing speak after the flavor stuff. So, just FYI, the American and French oak thing basically bespeaks to this, obviously the origin of the oak, but they have slightly different flavor profiles. American oak being more on the vanilla toasty side of things, especially when prepared with a toasted barrel, and the French side of things being a smoother, more mellow flavor. So obviously by mixing these two things, that's part of their winemaking process, and they want to influence how their wines taste by giving them a little hint of different seasoning slash flavor. So, all right, well, let's find out then. Of course, we're going to answer ourselves the next question. You know, whether it's a well executed wine, whether it's made without error, etc., whether it's on style for what it's attempting to be. It'll be interesting because Tempranillo, our best comparative opportunity here is the wines from Rioja, Spain, is probably the most common example of Tempranillo that's in the wild, especially non-blended. And then, is it worth the price tag? Right? Is this a buy it again, recommended to a friend, that kind of thing? All right. So color-wise, this is a very deep, dark, very deep, almost purple colored wine, right? We're not looking, it does not have a high clarity. It's very, very dark. You can see through if you backlight it, let's say like on my monitor, but generally speaking, you're not going to be able to read or see through it. So it's got a bit of density to it. But those colors indicate so that strong kind of Tempranillo thing. I'm wondering, of course, whether they are doing any actual blending. Remember that in the U.S., anything above 75%, 85% if you're in Oregon, can be, as long as you have 75% or more of a single grape, you can call that wine by that name. So there's a lot of what I would call hidden blending because winemakers don't disclose the small percentages they may use that top out that last 25%. So, but this one just says Tempranillo. On the nose, you've got a lot of dark fruits here. You got, I like that dried cherry thing is really gone straight to my brain. So I definitely smell what they're putting down there. But there are also aromas of either it's a combination of cranberry, which is actually a red fruit, but more in that it's more concentrated than that. Again, I want to say that dried version of it, or maybe even a cooked reduced version, more like like strawberry jam or raspberry jam, that kind of thing. So maybe not dark fruits. Maybe it's much more on the red nose in there. Yeah, I don't get any of this maybe the aromas of anything really of soil, earth, or herbaceousness. There's nothing in that half of the realm. We're not really getting any sort of any stone or soil, but it's a nice, solid, fruit-forward red. Which Tempranillo, that's exactly what we're asking for. So no complaints there at all. Okay. got really good structure. I mean, the tannin structure all the way around the route is carrying flavor everywhere it goes. Great indicator, right? It's not a tannin hammer that's just sitting there with that astringent, mouth drying sensation everywhere. Oh no, it's carrying that dried cherry, dried cranberry, and jammy sensation pretty much everywhere. The tannins aren't soft. It definitely has a sour cherry taste to it. So that, again, I like the comparison that they used on their label. I'm not getting their mocha. Except maybe there's a little hint of it in the end, right? And in fact, as far as the finish is concerned, that's what starts to turn into a smoky. I can easily see that in that smoky coffee kind of range. So the roasted kind of flavor that you're getting, but it's a bare hint in the very back. It's not leading with any sort of flavors of that chocolatey slash coffee realm in the front of the mouth. But yeah, very pleasant. And again, it feels like a reasonable bit of acidity here. There's always one that you have to kind of piece through because sour flavors we are generally what we associate with acid. But yeah, right there in the front of the mouth, there's a hint of it still living in there, which is good, right? That's what makes a wine that juiciness. It doesn't. This also they didn't they don't have a malolactic fermentation overload here, so we're not getting a lot of that creamy, buttery, soft thing. It's not a velvety soft red. It's a bright, assertive red, and that is wonderful. I would love to see how long they're aging in their oak program. That would be something I'm going to look into a little bit later. We'll probably pop on their website here in just a flash. But so in the Spanish world, which is our near comparative, we've got fresh wines that are just simply wine, right? So vino. But then when we talk about their crianza, Rioja, crianza, reserva, and gran reserva statuses, the age in length in time in oak is strongly influential to those styles of wine. So it's Tempranillo, when it is younger in age and less in oak, is this more bright thing. This lends me to think that they've got a program somewhere under a year in oak. Great, again, stylistically speaking, great choice. I think it's very approachable, and certainly has some options for a lot of Texas fare, Texas, famous Texas things like smoked meats, barbecue, things like that would be a great partner. So Tempranillo hitting its niche. So to answer our big three questions, right? Is it well executed? Absolutely. It's not flawed in any way. They're not going over the top in any one direction. They're not turning the dials to 11. They've got a great compromise between all of the big flavor components and in the structural parts of the wine. In fact, the 13.9% alcohol doesn't really come up as a hot feeling in your mouth at all. It's well tempered by fruit and tannin structure. So the fruits, the acids, the alcohol, and the tannins are all in harmony. Is it on style? I'd say yeah. I mean, especially because we're not trying to compare it to an older age Tempranillo from Spain, but we're talking about a young one. Joven, this is a great example of that style. I think they're doing really well. And again, if this is what Texas is aiming at, then they've got a pretty good niche to hit, and then can go and refine what that looks and feels like. Ripeness of fruit, presence of acid, additional flavors. The more you go through, I also think that as this is going to open up, I think we're going to start seeing more of that smoky mocha, that kind of profile that comes in some of these older age ones. A little more savoriness to it, because I can feel it in the back of my mouth. The more I talk, and the more that kind of aerates through, those little lingering aromatics are starting to get more that direction. Okay, is it worth the price tag for $12? Hell yeah, it's a great wine at $12. And this is definitely Texas doing it right. I'm really eager to see when they go up the price scale, whether they are what I would put in that competitive category and they're the same thing, or whether that may be a function of smaller production. I don't know what Becker's case count is, although if they're a grocery store level wine, in other words, they have the production capacity to maintain at least a local presence, that speaks pretty well to how much they can produce. To put that in perspective from different states, and I mean physically here, as in our United States, smaller wine producing states often have wines that you don't find much outside the state. In other words, the wineries that produce the quantity, that produce the quality that gets bought generally speaking, gets eaten up by its own demographic. It is far less expensive to ship within the state, sell within the state, and sell out than ship across state lines, do greater, longer shipping, etc. Virginia, a great example here, where it's hard to find a lot of Virginia wines outside Virginia simply because while good quality, they're not producing enough to really be in the export market yet. They're perfectly happy filling their orders and selling to their state economy, and don't really have much chance to get outside of it. Texas, I think, is a little bit bigger than that. I mean, as far as scale is concerned, but not by much. Remember, it's still a fairly small wine producing area, or region overall. So I'm interested to find out how much Becker produces, and whether the reason that they're reserve wines is either extra handling, whether it's different type of fruit treatment, whether they're doing any specific thing. What is it that makes it reserve, and what is it that makes it $50? Is it scarcity? Is it because those wines are under such high demand that they can ask $50 and receive it for it, right? So in other words, the scarcity is a false inflation metric, because this is the example. By other examples, when things are more popular than their quantity allows, that means demand is high, therefore prices are high. So good on them, by the way. Now, that's not a criticism. That's simply a fact of, well, if they're going fast and they're in high demand, then they can sell them for whatever the hell they can get for it. Bravo to them. Now I just want to, I want to make that comparative across the line. So anyway, very cool stuff. Like I said, great example. I'm glad to kick off this kind of theme next week with a wine that I certainly find very enjoyable, and hope you guys will try one out too. Let's see. So we've got a couple. So Becker, I know, is one that we're going to try and visit. Let's see. I got to consult my notes because I didn't put it in my show notes because I'm a fool sometimes. Let's see. There's a couple of other places that I'm interested in. We're going to try it out. I think Barbara just mentioned Lost Draw, which is actually a list on one of my lists. That's good. My two big ones, I want to check out William Chris and Coolman Cellars. They're both in that Stonewall area, right around the corner from Becker physically. Now, remember that where the wineries are located and where the grapes are grown are a pretty significant Texas-sized chunk of real estate apart. That is something I really kind of want to dig into with some of the winemakers. To quote Letterkenny, it feels like you're overhandling it there, Squirrely Dan, in that you got a big portion of the wine world. There's a lot of experience, history, prestige, and frankly, physically important about being close to the location where you're growing grapes, because at that time of harvest, getting them out of the field and into the winery is a delicate and important time frame. Okay, so there's a lot of variables in that. Now, that doesn't mean that they're taking the grapes, putting them on trucks, and shipping them down to Fredericksburg area, from Lubbock area. They may be processing them into must, basically doing the press up there, and then at some designated time, putting them in a tanker truck and moving them A to B. I'm very interested to know what the process is, because how you handle that whole thing and what you're doing to that grape juice is a pretty important decision in a winemaker's world. And I know that from other large-scale winemakers, we're going to talk about Piano Lang twins, etc. When a facility that produces and processes a lot of wine for many growers, that distance factor is a big part of it. However, their estate wines are not just called that because they're on premises, but that's the benefit of them being on premises. You get them off the vine and into the vat, into production very quick, compared to, well, we ship these in from 4 hours away. So that'll be on the list of things to learn when it comes to next week. So Texas Wine Tour next week will be Monday through Thursday, which means from WineShark Wednesday, there is not going to be a live streaming WineShark Wednesday because I don't know what the internet connection / I don't want to bring the computer / I'm going to be drinking and having a good time. But mostly, I may do some live content that'll post either the Facebook or Instagram, kind of get you guys clued in, kind of get you seeing behind the scenes about what we're doing. I know some of the guests that are actually online right now are going to be joining us, so it's going to be a lot of fun. You get to see some of the Wine Shark fans get to drink with the Wine Shark, kind of like a whole preview to what the cool tours will be like. Just a little less organized. So, very excited. It's going to be a good time. It's going to be an interesting trip. And then right after that, we're going to come home and start off the Discover Renaissance Festival. So started prepping for that, and I'm starting to do wine selections and all that kind of thing. But to say the least, it's going to be a very busy April. Lots of fun things going on, lots of opportunities for in-person tastings. If you have the opportunity, we'll still be doing Wine Shark Wednesdays, and we'll be doing the 2 shows in April. So we've got, like I said, on the 15th and the 29th, we've got the 15th is White Dessert Wines. The 29th is Will It Blend, the Bordeaux edition. So speaking of which, I need to go buy the wines that I recommended for those, put them on the list. Anyway, I hope to see you guys coming up soon. Any other questions? I mean, I know I'm at the appropriate little level of streaming delay here, but after Barbara left to go to choir practice, everybody's been kind of quiet. Make sure I didn't miss any questions in here. All right. No, didn't miss anything. Okay, everybody's just all good. So, and I have not heard of Dotson Cervantes. So, duly noted. Tell Barbara later. All right, guys. Well, I hope you guys have a great week. I hope you enjoy some wine on your own time and join us for some wine together. Until the next time, I have been your Wine Shark. Cheers.